The late 1800s was an almost pubescent time for warfare, where the sight of Gatling guns showed the faults in said warfare. It also gave a glimpse into the future that trenches would have, playing a huge role in the war, and with wave tactics being seen. The Union had a really big problem in the beginning stages of the war. It was suffering from a military brain drain. The US's Army Officer School at West Point trained every officer and general each army had, with the only problem being most of them fought for the South and chose state over country, which led to some pretty useless generals like McClellan being able to take charge of the army. McClellan's consistent inability to even act against the enemy was perhaps the leading cause to the Union's early defeats, as well as dragging out a quite simple war. Luckily for the Union, they had a general who knew what they were doing, Ulysses S. Grant, who at the time was rampaging through the Mississippi River region. They also had another competent general, who famously or infamously marched through Georgia, who was General Sherman. Sherman's dreaded acts had a purpose. It was to cause such fear that the soldiers in the battle would flee for their families and desert en masse, as well as stop the Confederate war machine. This goal was an undeniable success, but whether it was worth it is up to you. Seeing his victories out west, Lincoln promoted Grant to the General of the Army of the Potomac. Almost immediately, Grant took the initiative in combat and attempted to attack Richmond. Though a bloody slog, Grant finally made it to the capital and continued to follow Lee's retreating army, where they would find them in a courthouse outside of Lynchburg. After a small engagement, Lee surrendered, and the war would soon be over. Lee's surrender made word across the country, and everyone else surrendered, except for a few holdouts. Much like land combat, naval combat was going under major changes during the time period. The Union's plan for naval warfare was called the Anaconda Plan, which used a naval blockade to starve out the South. This plan worked, but not as well as they wanted it to, so a new strategy needed to be implemented to help counter Confederate blockade runners. The U.S. had a few plans to use these brand new ironclads to scare away the blockade runners, and the other was to destroy southern port facilities. The former was not as successful as the latter, mainly due to CSA having ironclads of their own. The most famous engagement of ironclads during the war would be at the Battle of Hampton Roads, which deserves an episode of its own. But after the battle, naval warfare was changed forever, and woodships will slowly be phased out of most navies. The western theater of war was relatively small, mostly just skirmishes between local militias. The reason why it wasn't such a bigger theater was due to the lack of people who lived there. There are some notable battles that we will give homage to in future videos, but aren't really worth saying in this particular video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this helped you not need to study so hard for that test or class. It's been an honor to serve you all, and have a beautiful rest of your day.